Hello, y'all. Set to achieve. Welcome to another video. Good morning. And today I'm talking about a topic that has impacted me, and as a matter of fact, is still impacting me. And the title of today's message is one of the hardest things you would ever have to do. Okay. And this is related to narcissistic abuse, and more importantly, family narcissistic abuse and breaking free. Okay. Breaking free away from your narcissistic family, the people that you grew up with, the people that raised you, is literally one of the hardest things you would ever have to do. And God knows it. Let me just try to adjust this a little bit. Okay. Please, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video. And let's talk about this. I was raised by narcissists. My mom is a narcissist. My dad is a narcissist as well. He's more of the enabler, but he's also a narcissist. Um, and that's where I was raised. I was raised by narcissists. And I was raised to be very, very codependent, even into my marriage to a narcissist with three teenagers, no, two teenagers and one adult now. And it was very difficult. I ran away from home after my first year in college. I came back home to the community college, and then I ran away um, to go stay with a roommate, and because I couldn't just stand like the atmosphere in my house. And even today, till today, there's no acknowledgement of accountability with my parents. And till today, my mother especially feels like she played no role in pushing me away. And my parents don't take any accountability. My father, I believe that he knows, and my mother, I don't know, I feel like she's delusional, and she has so lied to herself and convinced herself that she's a good person, that there's nothing you can say to her. It's only going to take the grace of God to really make her to look into herself. She is completely like, my father, I believe that he knows exactly what the problems are, but he chooses to gaslight everyone that tries to bring it up because he wants to keep his little image, the image of his family, together. So my father knows everything that's going on. And my father's part of the problem. He's actually the bigger part of the problem, because because he doesn't want to, because he's a codependent narcissist. He does not want to be alone. Okay? He's one of those narcissists that don't want to be alone. He doesn't want to be left alone. He doesn't want to his family. He doesn't want to have to divorce. He doesn't want to have to scatter, because he's so attached to his worldly possessions. Um, and he is not willing to. And there's so many times my mom has left him, and at a time my mom actually wanted to divorce him, but he was not willing, because he didn't want to have to split his property and things like that, because narcissists are very, very, even though his whole house was caving in, even though he was not happy in his marriage, even though he saw that everything was crashing, and his oldest daughter had started falling into mental illness, he still was not willing to divorce and separate, because of the fact that he didn't want to be alone. Okay, so codependency and the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, the image. The narcissist will protect the image of the perfect family, that image, to the whole world, and not knowing that it's all lies, it's all fake. So that's the way it's been. Um, Very difficult. maneuvering through a dysfunctional family, a narcissistic family cult, whereby the king of the cult has always been my father. My mother is a covert narcissist, but my father is a bigger narcissist than she is. But they're both narcissists. And they have a very tumultuous, terrible marriage that they keep together because of the image. So, and you can imagine raising children in that atmosphere. So, and so my family, so my father was here in the United States, and myself and my siblings were with my mom in Nigeria, like until I was like 12, right? So when I was 12, finally my parents finally brought us, my father, I guess he had filed for myself, my mother, and my siblings, and we finally joined him here. I was 11, like a few months to 12. And after I joined my father here, it seemed like everything fell to pieces. And I don't know, maybe my parents didn't really know each other because it was like 5 years that they were separated, my father being here and us being there. And they really didn't know, it seemed like they really didn't know each other as well as they thought it was they did. And when they finally, you know, they call America like the leveling ground. My mother being a teacher in Nigeria, and I think at some point she became a vice principal in her school, and to come here and start from scratch, having to work at places that she didn't want to work at, you know, as a cashier or as a this, and just like having to just start from level, and her having that narcissism and being very prideful, it really, really hit her like, and it made her like hit rock bottom and just like spin out of control. And my father being a narcissist here, having that, always wanting that control, it was just like a whole big clash, and they were always fighting and arguing, and you know there was just so much unhappiness and chaos. It was just chaotic, you know so my mother was unhappy and felt like things weren't working out for her. And so she then she tried to pull us back and take us back to Nigeria after fighting all these years to bring us here. So it was just like a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. And but and so many times she went away, to apartments or whatever. And my father would plead and have her come back. And it was just like I didn't understand like how someone would want to be with someone that didn't want them. And he really didn't want her, but he didn't want her to divorce him and split his possessions, the things that he's worked for all his life. So hmm, when you're dealing with narcissists, they it doesn't matter what has to crash. And then the children were suffering under that crazy tumultuous atmosphere. So eventually I ran away. And because my father knew that how my sister went down, she started having like bipolar episodes and schizophrenic episodes, and started going to psychiatrists and therapists and different things. And she just went down the hill. She went down the drain basically, and she still lives with them till today. They're in their 80s and 70s, and she's still with them. She never left. She's still under medication and everything. And I believe is the demons that were in that house that just made everything worse. My sister herself, she's a narcissist. She a family of narcissists. And but because I believe that she didn't have Christ, I believe she never had Christ. you know the situation with my parents dragged her down real fast because she didn't have anything to hold on to. She had no anchor, you know. And we know that Jesus Christ is our anchor. So she went down and I ran away. And my father started supporting me while I was out of the house because he knew um he knew the source of the problem, that it was them, but there was nothing he could do about it because he had to hold on to his possessions, and he didn't want to be alone. So it's like, well, don't worry, I'll give you a little something while you're out there trying to, make it or whatever. So it's always been up and down. And then because of the wounds that I never healed up until more recently, I ended up falling into the hands of a narcissist and getting married and having kids with a narcissist, a covert, one that was really slick and sly, deceitful, made me feel like I had found the love of my life, made me feel like I could trust him, that I could confide in him, like he would be my anchor. And what narcissists do is they will set up a carpet, really plush carpet underneath you, make you feel like you're on top of the world, love bomb you, especially those coverts. You can never sight them if not for the Spirit of God, and then they lay a really plush carpet underneath you. And then once you feel like you're so comfortable, they will just yank it right from underneath you, and you will stumble and fall and hit your head. So that's what it was. And so, my marriage was, it felt like hell on earth because everything that happened behind closed doors, you know, myself and my children got to experience all that abuse, all that raging, the silent treatments for nothing, just because he was unhealed, you know, and he never dealt with his narcissism. He never dealt with his wounds, and he just let the demons take completely over him from his parents. He has his own wounds, you know, that he never healed. And rather than taking it to Christ and submitting himself to Christ, he turned to Satan and let Satan overcome him with addictions and all kinds of things. So there it was, having to manage all of that, dealing with my parents and their stuff, dealing with, so it was just really, really, really chaotic. And finally, when I got the nerve, and God opened up my eyes to narcissism. So I started finally realizing, because I knew things were bad, but I didn't know the topic of narcissism. I didn't know really how they operate. So when I prayed and fasted and God opened up my eyes to the topic of narcissism, God opened up my eyes to exactly what it was I was dealing with, how they operate, how the nature of narcissists, their character, the deceitfulness, the gaslighting, the lies, all the manipulation. I ended up separating from my ex, the father of my children, 2.5 years ago. So I separated from him and broke free. So he left the house, and so it was just me and my children. My children. I prayed a lot because I didn't even know, I was under so much confusion, so much warfare, and it was really, really hard. Because my parents benefited a lot from that relationship, that situationship. They benefited a lot by using him to keep me codependent on them. It's like he was the glue that kept. So my parent, he was my ex was the glue that kept me. So remember, I ran away, but it was because of my ex. You know, he was a narcissist, and he was using my parents as supply because he would get a lot of financial help from my dad, a lot. You know, um, and so he would do whatever my dad wanted to keep me subdued. So when I finally left him, my dad knew that that was the beginning of the end in terms of the hook that they had on me. So, I just held on to God and just continued it, one day at a time. It was very difficult because I wasn't financially there. I was still codependent even after I left my ex. And I had to, it was like almost like digging myself out of a ditch, one shovel at a time, each day, each month, just trying to figure myself out, trying to find some balance, so that I could be able to break out of the abuse, to break out of the codependency, and to be able to get, especially anchor myself spiritually. And then I found out there's a lot of my cousins that were narcissists, that I had to break free from. Um, I remember I had just broken up with my ex, and I used to put out posts on Facebook, and I had a lot of my cousins, and I had a lot of friends, hundreds of friends and family, you know, before I finally closed that account. You know, I reopened another account, but I have very few friends, and just I barely post on that. But so I put out a post. I think I put out a post about something, and one of my cousins, my mom's relatives, her sister's daughter, she was like, you know, she made a comment about my our parents, during that time. And I just broke up with my ex, and it's just like, why not just comment on the video? Why not, but she would never comment on my video or say, something positive, like hardly ever. Like it will always mostly be, it was like, and she had called me on WhatsApp, and I picked up her phone, and she was asking what happened, and I told her that we broke up and everything, and everything. And then she was trying to, like, get us to, come back together, like, well, no marriage is perfect. They'll say all this crap and everything. And then it just like, and then it was just like, I feel like she kept harassing me, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I had to just, like, eventually block her. Long story short, I just had to block her because it was just a lot. I removed myself from the cousin group. So the I I was just like, once I broke away from my ex, God started opening up my eyes to the other narcissists that was in my family, and I was just breaking up from them, and just getting away from them, just breaking away from all of that narcissism and all of that crap, and just like saying enough is enough. I didn't want to be around it anymore in any capacity, you know, and just like literally like taking myself back. I didn't realize that I didn't even know myself. Like really, like literally just taking myself back, like from the devil, and from all the claws. Like it's like bondage, just cutting up all those chains by blocking, by removing myself, and the last people that I had to remove myself from was my parents. And that was the hardest because I was codependent on them financially. I was codependent on them emotionally. I was codependent on them, even though they were literally just blocking my destiny and zapping my life away. It's like being codependent on the devil. You know what that means, right? So eventually, I blocked my mom, and I with my dad, because I've always been so close to him. I just limited my, like, his access to me. I just limited his access, and because he saw that we had banned my mom from coming here. He was like, "Well, if you ban her, you ban me." So, we just let that work itself out and everything. I have not spoken to him in months, and this is the clearest I've been in my head, be able to think without having to double guess myself, double think, and just always second guess myself. You know, having those demons always speaking in my ear. Those demonic voices. And there are times that I kind of like feel bad, but I know that my parents are too old for me to continue to make excuses for them. My father is in his 80s, my mother is in her 70s, and it's like I have to leave them for God, because if I keep staying attaching myself to them, I will never give God a chance. And they don't have too much longer. So I will never give God a chance to work on them so they can self-reflect. Okay? God willing. Okay? That's not in my hands. I'm 42 now. I don't have the time anymore to keep looking back. My children are almost adults. My youngest is 16. So there's no time anymore to keep looking back. This is time to forge ahead financially, spiritually, emotionally. continue to heal, um, and just not look back and just trust God fully, because He's the only one that brought me this far, you know. So it's one of the hardest things that I've have ever had to do, and God knows it, because we have, as um, as they call it empaths. I don't really like the word empath, because that's more of an Ahab spirit, a weak. We're not empaths. When you have Christ, you cannot be an empath. But we're very sympathetic and empathetic. You know, um, and so we kind of, we feel sorry for these people. At least they're my parents. Well, that's my brother. That's my sister. We're always like that. But then we're idolizing our emotions rather than just obeying God. You know, and the Bible says obedience is better than sacrifice. So just obey God. Let Him work on it. Pull yourself away from them. Let them say whatever they want to say. Let them talk to whoever they want to talk to. Pull yourself away and let God work on them. That they are not your assignment. You've done whatever you have to do. You can't drown in trying to save somebody else. That's not your work. Leave God. Leave them for God. Let God be the one to judge. Let God be the one to um, convict. Let God be the ones to open up their eyes, if they will, if they're willing to humble themselves. That is on them. Okay, everybody has their path. Okay, they've hindered you long enough. They've hindered me long enough. And it's time for me to keep on walking in freedom. So yeah, it's the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. One of the hardest things, but it is what it is, and it has to be done. It had to be done. So, and so that God can get the glory. Anyway, set to achieve. I just want to put out this video. You can leave your comments. If you have similar situations, or just you know had a hard time, breaking free from narcissists in your family, leave your comments, and like the video to share to more people, because I want more people to get this. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and until next time, God bless.